This is Voices for Climate, the podcast where activists, scientists, innovators, and everyday people speak out for our planet. If you're looking for honest conversations, bold ideas, and real climate solutions, you're in the right place. My name is Arnav, and today we're joined by Martha Cain. Martha was a middle school teacher from 1991 to 2018 and an activist since 1982. In 2019, she worked with 1,000 grandmothers for future generations to produce short video content and an online workshop about the Green New Deal. In 2021, she was part of a team to convince the Berkeley Unified School District to pass a climate literacy resolution with funding. Since then, she's helped put that plan into action, organizing climate fairs and festivals. She's also in her third year mentoring students with the CYCP. Martha, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Arnav. It's great to be here. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, so to start off, could you share what drew you to climate activism, especially after a very long career of teaching?
Well, yeah, one thing I will say is that in addition to teaching, I've always been an activist, so it's kind of in my blood. And when I retired, I had several different ideas about like how I would spend my time. And a friend of mine had attended Al Gore's Climate Reality Project workshops. And she said, "We need to have lunch. I need to talk to you." And she said, "This climate situation is really severe and we really need to do something about it." So I organized a little workshop at my house because it was before COVID, where my friend Carolyn came and presented about the Climate Reality Project and some of their statistics and whatnot. And then soon thereafter, with 1,000 grandmothers for future generations, there was a small group of us who wanted to make a video about the Green New Deal. Because at that time, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey were putting forth the Green New Deal idea, and it made a lot of sense to us. So we wanted to make it intelligible to people that were kind of within our realm. And so we created a little video and a workshop, which we proceeded to present online over COVID. And that was pretty much the beginning of it for me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very interesting. And, could you maybe tell us more about this workshop? So you said you posted it online. What type of people, maybe watched the content?
Yeah, so it was mainly people in my age group, so older people, who we invited. I mean, it wasn't like people raised their hand and said, "Oh, let me come." We actually recruited people to attend, and like I said, they were mainly in our age group, and our goal was to just have a conversation about climate change and the need for everybody to chip in and do something. And so creating a forum where that could be the focus of the conversation pretty much. And also just making people aware of what the Green New Deal was and why it was important. And I'll just say that one of the things that happened more or less at the same time was that I had met a parent right before I retired. She and I were both on the school site council for the middle school where I was teaching, and she was planning to run for the school board. And she wanted me to help her, prepare for that and also to get the backing of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers who do a little interview process with potential candidates. And I said to her, I said, "Laura, they're going to ask you about the Green New Deal. So you should know about it." And she said, "Oh, yeah, tell me about it." Well, so the best thing is watch our little video that we made. She was so interested in the Green New Deal and she didn't know about it before. And so that was also part of kind of the audience around that. And I think maybe that was the most powerful part because
Mhm.
she was the school board member who, together with a parent and a teacher and myself, and a student and myself, were kind of the main force behind passing the 2021 climate literacy resolution for Berkeley Unified School District.
Mhm. Yeah, that's an amazing story. And so, yeah, can you maybe tell us more about the resolution that you helped pass? Who was involved? What did the process look like?
Yeah, so as I said, this school board member, she became a school board member. I think, if I remember the timing correctly, sometime in early 2021 or something like that. And so as soon as she was on the school board, people were approaching her with ideas, including a sophomore from Berkeley High School whose name was Ella Suring, and a parent named Sarah Rainey who was working with her. And they were through a group of this in the Sierra Club, San Francisco Bay chapter. They were working together to bring a climate literacy resolution to the school board. And so they approached Laura, and Laura said, "Oh, you should talk to Martha Cain." So the three of us got together, and I would say that Sarah and Ella and Laura mainly get the credit for the writing of the resolution. Um, and also, um, Laura took it to the associate superintendent and they went back and forth on the language. And so um, it was really critical that Laura, the school board member, was part of this because she had the capacity to tap the associate superintendent and really get him involved and get his input and ultimately get the superintendent's input and involvement. And then it was very powerful that we had a team of a student from Berkeley High School because school boards always like to listen to students. I mean, they like it when students come and bring something forth because it shows that they're being involved in their education. And if there's any voices that I think they're particularly sensitive to, I think it's the voices of students. Students might not feel that way, but I kind of think that it is that way. So at any rate, the four of us were, sort of the core group, but there were also teachers who I'd been communicating with who came into the fold and said, yes, let's do it. And one teacher sent a email out across the Berkeley Unified School District conference with a letter to get other teachers to sign on. And so we had about 70 teachers that in the period of 3 days, right before the resolution was going to be considered, they signed on. And then Sarah, the parent, she sort of organized the community and found another community member who, I don't know what it's called, but there's some app that you can put out there that gets people to sign on. So she had some kind of letter out there that I think got, I don't know, 500 signatures or something like that, just, over a short period of time using the internet. And then also we had, I think probably Sarah was mostly responsible for this. We tapped several different organizations like the Sierra Club, like 350.org, and other climate related groups who lent their logos to a slide that we put together a slide deck for the school
Mm.
board meeting. And then that was part of it, and the signatures are part of it. And then Laura, the school board member, she pretty much, held the discussion with the other school board members. And Berkeley was, I would say, quite predisposed to be interested in passing a resolution just because of, who we are. But what was key was that Laura, who has a background in finance, I mean, her day job is in some big company related to finance. She talked to the associate superintendent about dollars to be attached. And so we came into the discussion with the school board asking for, I don't know, I can't remember the exact number, but it was, maybe 100,000 or something. And they whittled it down to, they were going to give us 67,000. They said they were. And then as things, after the resolution passed and the following school year came, then it kind of got squeezed down to about 45,000. But anyway, the key things is that it was passed with money attached, which was really important
Yeah.
for Berkeley Unified.
Hmm. Yeah, that's honestly a very amazing movement. Could you maybe explain why they whittled down the money? Was there any specific reason that they did that?
Well, because school boards always do that. You know, that, they think they're going to have a certain amount of money. And
Mm.
so the school board puts a dollar amount attached to it. And then in July, when they balance their, when the fiscal year ends in July, or begins, the new fiscal year begins in July, and this was done in November. So by the time they got to July, they were going, oh, wait, well, we have to do this and we have to do that and we have to move this money here. And so it was that type of thing, that they didn't they didn't know exactly how much money they would get from the state. And that always, always, always happens with school districts
Right.
in July. So
Mm. Yeah. And do you foresee this being an issue in the future where, the amount of money you're given kind of cuts down further and then you're sort of unable to implement initiatives?
well, it's certainly a concern in the current environment. I mean,
Hmm.
federal funding is being cut to a lot of schools, public schools. And so, yeah, no, it's always, always an issue. And that's why it was so fantastic that Laura, our school board member, managed to get this money attached, to bring that up. Um, but I would also say that, yeah, it's definitely a concern. But I also think in California, there's plenty of private money. The San Francisco Bay Area is a very wealthy area, and a lot of individuals with a lot of private wealth who care about the environment. So I'm not, um, I'm dismayed about the lack of government support, federal support that's happening right now. But I think that there's enough smart people out there that know we need to do something. So hopefully, private money is not going to be impossible to find.
Well, that's good to hear. So could you maybe now tell us kind of what were the outcomes that came out after this resolution was passed? Any specific stories from students that you heard about? Anything like that?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, so we passed it in November of 2021.
Mm.
And we really didn't get anything off the ground in a big way until the following fall, which was this, beginning of the 2022-2023 school year. The 2022-2023 school year, we decided to have two showcases, one at the middle school level and one at the high school level, to showcase student work because we thought having an event in the spring that people could work toward and that where teachers could showcase work that their students had done related to climate literacy was a good recipe. And it worked out,
Right.
it was really great. And so I don't know, we had about, probably about 300 people attend
Oh, wow.
the fair that we had. And across kind of at the middle school level, it was middle school and high and elementary students and their parents and community members who came, and we showcased student work. We had other activities. We had a like little area having to do with repair and reuse. We served soup made by the Growing Leaders Garden Program that's from one of the schools. We had donated bread, and we had other activities that students could do, little projects. And we
Hmm.
had community groups that came in to help run those. So anyway, that we were very happy with that result, and that was really with nobody coordinating it at at the school district level
Yeah.
per se. But then the following that spring, we managed to start lobbying the school board to create a position of someone who would coordinate it at the district level, and we managed to get them to agree to to 80% position of a teacher on special assignment doing climate literacy. So the next school year, we were more organized around supporting teachers and getting lessons put together that were related to climate literacy. And again, we had the showcases. I'll say one other thing that happened in 2022, 2023 that was really great. We had one teacher at the high school who was really on fire, and she was teaching newcomers. And so her students presented PowerPoint presentations to their peers in the
Hmm.
library of climate change in their countries of origin. So
Wow.
it was a very powerful unit that she put together where students who were English
Yeah.
as a second language were presenting publicly to their peers about climate change in their countries of origin. It was really fantastic. And then
Hmm.
coinciding with that, there was a day at the high school of activities um, related to climate change, like the biology students in one class had done science fair boards on different things related to climate literacy, and they were presenting those, and students from other classes were coming around and looking, and there were community partners. So anyway, we did those, something at the high school, something at the middle school, and the
Hmm.
elementary did some of their own little climate marches at their schools and that sort of thing. And then the following year, we had the teacher on special assignment. We repeated a lot of what we had done, and we kind of strengthened it. And we began to coordinate more closely with there is a position in Berkeley Unified for a sustainability coordinator who works under the maintenance department. And
Hmm.
so we started coordinating with her to try and improve some of the school district's practices. Specifically, we were really focused on getting reusable dishes in the cafeterias, which we're still working on.
Hmm.
But anyway, that began to happen, and there was some grant writing that was happening, and we did get a few small grants, and then the next year uh, the teacher on special assignment went on maternity leave, which, we were very happy that she was going to have a baby, but that meant we had to figure out how to keep things going.
Yeah.
Um, and we did, but one of the things that helped keep things going was that we added there was some more teachers that came into the effort. And we added, and I mentioned it when I sent you my notes, that we had three Fix-It festivals where we partnered with several community partner organizations that are very interested in repair and reuse. And so we had three Fix-It festivals where those community organizations brought in people who were coaches, who had tools, who knew how to fix things, electronics, sewing, you know, furniture, just things. And
Hmm.
so people could sign up to bring in something that was broken and get coaching on how to fix it, and
Oh,
then
wow.
leave with their item fixed, right? And so, in
That's nice.
advance of those three Fix It festivals, we had a week-long unit on repair in the middle school makerspace class. So the students got to learn about the importance of repair, experience like taking things apart and putting them back together, and then also experience a sewing activity, a bike tube repair activity, and a
Wow.
computer kind of what are some of the repairs that the BUSD technology department has to do with computers that students use. So they got to, you know, experience putting the keys back on and, things like that.
That's
So anyway,
nice.
those Fix It festivals and that repair unit were really powerful. And we
Hmm.
did that in addition to the high school showcase and the middle school. We actually made the middle school showcase to be not just middle school, but K through 8.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that was that was how it was in spring of 2025.
Wow, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a very impressive initiative, and especially, seeing that kindergartners even are getting involved, I think is really great. And so, in your opinion, at what stage would you consider these sort of initiatives to be successful? Like, how do you define success when it comes to climate education?
Well, I think one thing that's really important is that these resolutions be passed with some money attached to them
Hmm.
because teachers, education is completely under fire, especially right now. And
Hmm.
teachers are like up to here in terms of what they have to do. And
Mm, yeah,
so, whatever we add that's to their plate that's extra that they have to teach, they have to be motivated to do. And
right.
so I think, and they need to be paid. They need to be paid for the time they spend
Of
planning these
course.
lessons. So I really think having money attached is a measure of success, and
Hmm.
exactly where that money comes from maybe doesn't really matter that much,
Yeah.
as long as it's there and there's a way for them to get paid for their participation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, besides sort of the budget concerns that we talked about before, are there any other
Mhm.
concerns you potentially see in terms of like barriers when it comes to effective climate education?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of barriers. You know, we're lucky in Berkeley that we
Hmm.
have I would say, a community or that's that recognizes that climate change is real, that values um, the idea that their students should be taught about it because it's going to be a reality moving, it is a reality moving forward. And
Yeah.
also people who are sympathetic, I think, to the ideas in the Green New Deal that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey, were championing, and then now Bernie Sanders and AOC are championing, that idea, which basically is about addressing climate change along with achieving other social policy changes that have to
Hmm.
do with reducing economic inequality and that sort of orient and climate justice. And, creating green jobs and making sure that those jobs are protected and that people have health care and so forth. So
Yeah.
um, I think uh, that I'm fortunate in Berkeley that, there is already that orientation. When it comes to, other places where that may not be on the forefront as much, I'm a little challenged to answer that because I live in the bubble I live in. But I do have some ideas about that.
Hmm. Well, yeah. So I guess, maybe would you mind sharing what ideas you might have in terms of teaching climate change to politically or culturally divided communities?
Yeah. So one thing that I think about when I encounter people in a social situation, it could be, a cousin or
Hmm.
for someone younger, it could be an uncle or an aunt or whoever who really
Hmm.
looks at the world differently. One of the things I like to do is ask them this question, that when you think about the values that you have, because everybody has values, right? When you think about the values you have, what was it in your background that that made you have these values? And inevitably, people can answer that question. They can say, "Oh yeah, no, the values I have because." And it might be because my father always, he was really into sports and he always taught me to play fair. Or, it might be, well, my religious upbringing taught me social responsibility or, something like that. So
Hmm.
I like to ask them that question so it centers on them and then begin to move the conversation from there to the issues that I think are important around climate change and equality and green jobs and so forth. So, so mostly on the personal level. Now, on the community and student level, well, on the student level, I think it's really important that whatever education that we do, that it's grounded in what's age appropriate,
Right.
right, for them to understand. And what I'm pretty excited about right now is that we are bringing the sustainability side of Berkeley Unified and the climate literacy side. You wouldn't think they would be separate, but they are together to try to put systems in place in Berkeley Unified that students encounter when they enter like transitional kindergarten. They come
Wow.
to kindergarten and they learn, oh, this is how we do things. We separate our garbage. If you teach
Hmm.
kids when they're that young, this
Yeah.
is how we do it, they'll just do it. And then they'll go
Right.
home and tell their parents, oh, well, Farmer Ben says you have to do this, or Teacher Susie says you have to do that. And then the parents will go, okay. Because I know that happened to me when my daughter was growing up. She came home from her garden program. She said, Farmer Ben said you're supposed to turn off the water when you brush your teeth. And I am a little bit in the habit, I grew up when I
Mhm.
wasn't thinking about that as much, and I let the water run and I went, okay.
Right.
But so anyway, I think it's if you teach kids at a young level, this is how we do things. And we eat off reusable dishes and we stack our dishes wherever we stack them or we wash them and we separate our garbage. If you teach them these things, then they're going to adapt those habits. So there's that. And then there's the whole issue of how do you do it on the policy level and on that. And maybe later we can talk about CYCP and how that's helping on the policy level.
Yeah, and I think that definitely sounds like a very effective approach. If they learn so young, they'll inevitably incorporate it in their lives as they grow up. So yeah, it sounds amazing. Yeah, maybe we can talk about CYCP. Could you talk about how it works in the policy level?
Yes. So CYCP stands for California Youth Climate Policy, and it's a leadership program that is starting its third year right now. And it's
Hmm.
put together by the Sierra Club, the San Francisco Bay chapter of the Sierra Club, 10 Strands, which is the organization that the state gave $6 million to a couple years ago to write a K-8 curriculum for climate literacy. And then another group called Undaunted K-12 that does similar work. I think that Undaunted K-12 is a little more focused on the sustainability side, like the infrastructure side.
Hmm.
Anyway, so these three organizations, three women from these three organizations have put together this program that high school students can apply to, and it's a paid internship where the students work on trying to get a climate literacy policy or a sustainability policy passed um, at their school board level in their school district. And the way they've organized it, it's for anyone in the state, any students in the state of California can apply. And all of the whole workshop, the whole program is online. So we only meet virtually. And there's monthly workshops. And then in between the monthly workshops, there's coaching calls between mentors, like people like me, and
Hmm.
students that are trying to do it, where we help them identify their goals and reach them by
Hmm.
coaching them. And then in January, the students graduate, so to speak, and receive a $500 stipend. And the idea is kind of twofold. A lot of it is about just developing leadership um, in the area of climate literacy in these students and learning how to advocate for something in the public space. So a lot of it is that. But if they're able to move it forward in some way, and it doesn't have to be in a huge way, just move it forward in some way. They basically successfully completed the program and go on, I think, to do more work in that arena. So the idea behind it is that students, their sphere, right, is their school district. And so it's a
Hmm.
perfect place for them to learn these leadership skills and put them to work. And so that's what the program does.
Yeah, that's amazing. Are there any, say, maybe stories that you explicitly remember throughout your 3 years of mentoring with CYCP?
Oh yeah. So I had three students last year who I was mentoring, three different young
Hmm.
women. And two of them were in Los Angeles, and one of them was in a community near me, El Cerrito. But the two in Los Angeles were in two really different environments. One of them went to a charter school that was basically in downtown LA and didn't have your typical school board structure because charter schools are more of a business. So she was
Yeah.
working in that environment. The other student was working at a private school associated with UCLA, and she had a lot more administrative support on her end. And in addition to that, her grandfather, who I believe was on the faculty at UC San Diego, his area was climate literacy, or climate related issues, and he
Yeah.
already had worked with college level other professors, I think between UCLA and I'm not sure what other UCs, but to create a sort of curriculum at the college level. So she
Hmm.
was trying to adapt a piece of that to use in her school. And she managed to, through her connections, she was a very determined young woman and very articulate and can-do kind of attitude. But she also had a lot of support behind her, right? So she
Yeah.
was able to get the teacher at her school, who he taught some kind of life skill. I'm not sure exactly what the class was,
Hmm.
but it
Yeah.
was sort of part biology, part life skills, activism, something like
Hmm.
that. So he agreed to teach a week-long unit that she sort of had a big hand in putting together. And then I learned that that the some representatives of the Pope, I'm talking about the Pope in Italy, were going to be in California meeting with a small group of people around this topic of climate literacy and so forth. And so and I think that her grandfather was behind that. So she was the student who got to, it was a closed meeting. Only certain people could go. But she got to meet and be a part of that meeting. And
Wow.
not only that, but she told me, I said, you're doing really, in about November, I said, you're doing really great. You've sort of achieved everything you need to achieve, but you still have 2 more months of this program. What do you want to do? And she said, well, I was thinking maybe we could get Los Angeles Unified School District to adopt this little unit that I created. And I went, go for it. I know someone you can talk to. And so she did. She connected with this teacher, or administrator. I'm not sure, something halfway in between, um,
Hmm.
with her idea. And I don't think it got taught, to all of LA Unified, because it's a huge school district, but
Right.
she got in contact with him, and he also, I believe, was somehow part of this meeting with the representatives from the Pope or so. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
yeah. So that's my story.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Yeah. Um, I guess kind of the last question I have that I asked to everyone is what advice would you give to youth that are looking to get involved in terms of climate change, whether it's like climate literacy or other sort of movements and activist work?
Well, I think the CYCP program is a really good program to tap into. And so I sent you the link for that. And maybe, that could be included somehow, to anyone who's listening to consider applying for it. Usually students apply like in the late spring and around May or something. So anyway, that's one thing. I guess what the advice I would have is, well, I'll just say that in terms of how I feed my own interest in what I'm doing is in reading certain authors that are really looking at the human relationship with nature, and that I find inspiring writing. You need a source of inspiration to kind of keep yourself going, to be inspired, because we do live in this beautiful natural world. And it's so, when you're in nature, you just so much want to preserve it, right? So
Yeah.
be sure to fuel your life with contact with nature so that you understand and believe what it is we're working to do, which is to live in balance with nature, right?
Yeah.
And then And then also take that passion and figure out, how you can manifest it. What's the best avenue for you to manifest it? And then when you run up against obstacles, because you absolutely will, you know, be resilient. You take the passion and pick yourself up and kind of bounce back and persevere because I think it takes a lot of perseverance, but I like the word resilience better than perseverance because perseverance sounds like drudgery, whereas resilience kind of sounds like energy and bounce back and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And you mentioned books and authors. What are your favorite books or authors that you like?
Yeah. Um, directly in the kind of environmental activist arena, I've appreciated Bill McKibben. He's a contributing writer at the New Yorker, and he's an environmental activist and writer, and he started an organization called 350.org, and then an organization for older people like me called Third Act. So he's a definite inspiration. And also a writer and activist who comes out of the Bay Area, Rebecca Solnit. She's someone who I read and, sometimes have listened to her podcasts or Zooms that she's run. She's been very inspirational. We actually had her come speak at Berkeley High School in conjunction with the showcase at one point. And
Mhm.
then other authors that I've really appreciated are Robin Wall Kimmerer. She is an ethnobotanist and she wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. She's Native American. And then The Light Eaters, which is a book by a former writer for the Atlantic magazine named Zoe Schlanger. And it's all about plants and how amazing plants are. And then there's a book that's all about animals and how amazing they are in terms of all the way they use their five senses and then other senses that are part of them, which is a book by Ed Yong, who's a British American science journalist. And that book is called An Immense World. And right now I'm reading a book by Barry Lopez, he's no longer alive, but he wrote a book called Arctic Dreams and he was in an environmental and humanitarian, basically.
Hmm. Yeah, I might have
Yeah.
to read some of these books for myself. Yeah. But
Yeah, well,
yeah, thank you so much.
yeah,
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
highly recommend start with An Immense World by Ed Yong. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, thank you so much for your advice and all the insights. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience. So that's all we have today on Voices for Climate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and share it with someone who cares more about building a more sustainable future. I'll see you all next time. Thank you.